Welcome to Books The Biz, the show where real-world business meets real-world results. Hosted by business strategist Dan Paulson and veteran CFO Richard Beltry, this podcast breaks down the stories, trends, and financial insights shaping today's companies. Dan brings decades of experience helping leaders simplify operations, build strong cultures, and scale with confidence. Rich adds his deep financial expertise from guiding organizations across healthcare, construction, logistics, and professional services. Together, they dig into what's really happening behind the numbers and what it means for owners, executives, and anyone trying to grow a stronger, smarter business. This is practical conversation, real talk, and tools you can use right now. Welcome to Books The Biz.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Books The Biz. Rich, how are you doing?
I'm doing all right, Dan. How are you?
I'm doing good. Rich got the ick.
I got the ick.
You got the ick. So appreciate you sticking around and being able to sit in on this. So we won't. We'll try not to tax your vocal cords too much today. But I thought there were some interesting things popping up, and just wanted to touch base on, what I often hear from business owners is I'm too busy to do fill in the blank. I'm too busy to work on the next phase of my business. I'm too busy to improve. I'm too busy to look at the numbers. You kind of get the point. I actually did find an article from last year on this. I'll show it because it's by Inc. Busy isn't the same as productive. And I think that's what a lot of owners and even many professionals get stuck with, is the idea that, well, I'm busy, so I must be producing something positive. And often that's not the case. I find situations where many times people are extremely busy, but they're spinning their wheels, not actually getting anything done. And where I wanted to bring you into this was maybe to talk a little bit about how that impacts things financially, because I'm sure you have experience where you've talked to business owners about, in fact, I can probably think of some of them we've worked with together recently that would tell you they're very busy, but financially it's impacting them in a negative way. So I won't allow you to strain your vocal cords too much, but maybe if you could kind of share some of what you've experienced and how it does impact the business financially from a productivity standpoint when they can't get stuff done because they're doing all the wrong stuff.
I think one example came to mind immediately when you said that. And I had a relatively small construction company that every week he would write his employees their check. He would calculate what their paycheck was. And then it came time to doing the paychecks. And he was spending all kinds of time calculating how much he was paying each person, how much taxes he was going to have, or how much he took out of their pay. And then at the end of the month, he had to figure out what to give me, and I would help calculate what had to be, what had to be submitted. And then finally, he was always behind. He was always behind on getting his taxes done, getting the payments made, getting everything submitted. And finally, I said, "Did you ever think about going on a payroll service?" And the hardest part about going on the payroll service was the cash effect, because the payroll service takes your tax money when you make the payroll. You're not holding it over in your account for a month until you actually make the payment. So as long as you get comfortable with the fact that you have to pay those taxes a little bit earlier, the amount of time you just freed up for you not to have to do all that work just became a monstrous amount of what you can do on something else. So it's a very big reminder that all these, at least on the small side, there are things out there that you could hand off to someone else or do some different way. And suddenly you get the time to do the things that you want to do or need to do. So I think that it really was, it was very important to me when I heard from that owner a few years later. That was a really tough decision. That was a really tough move, but I'm so glad I did it.
Yeah, that is a perfect example, and that's usually what holds most business owners back. Is there's some sort of investment in technology or into somebody else's uh, some other professional maybe that you need to bring in to actually do some of that stuff. I see that often as well, whether it's bringing in a financial expert like there's an investment you got to make with that. But that investment pays dividends when you start applying it to now what does that free up the owner to really focus on, which is probably more impactful to what they should be doing anyway. From what I see on the operations side is this whole situation where it's owner dependence. And some of this is almost by design, whether it's conscious or not. And I guess the best way to describe this is the owner has an office in their facility somewhere, and I've shown up to meet with them and seen a line of people stretched out their door, and those people are all coming in to ask the owners questions.
Yep.
Or to talk to the owner about a situation. So the owner spent their entire time putting out fires instead of figuring out how to scale the business or find new ways to manage new markets, whatever it might be. They're spending all their time actually working on what are the problems that they hired people to solve that they're now spending all their time solving. And why I say this could be subconscious as much as anything is because we all have the need to feel important. We all have the need to feel like we belong, we matter, and we have purpose. And subconsciously, what happens when somebody's at your door asking you a question, that automatically puts you as the expert.
Mm-hmm.
What it also does is it puts the other person who's asking the question as you're the path of least resistance to getting a solution, and you're also the safe way to go about it, because if the owner says, do this, and you follow that instruction, then it's on the owner if the situation doesn't work out. It's not on the employee. And that's where I see the shift happen when you're looking at a company that's starting to grow and add employees. Is now more and more employees are lining up at the owner's doorstep to try to solve issues, and the owner never gets out of the office to actually fix anything that they need to do. So similar to your case, they're not applying, in this case, the resources they have to properly manage the organization as it's being run. And that's leading to a lot of backup. In my world, that slows everything down, because now if an employee has to wait to get a decision from the owner, that could take anywhere from a couple minutes to several hours to possibly, in some cases, I've even seen several days, if ever, because they get so busy on stuff that what they need to do never gets done. And on top of that, whatever problems are coming in sometimes get superseded by bigger fires that need to be put out. So you end up in the situation where that work just kind of sits there and churns, but never really gets any throughput on. And I can think of at least one organization where that was notorious, where the owner was so busy dealing with all the fires that they were putting out that everyone was just kind of put in a holding pattern. And think of it like an airport with planes kind of circling the runway waiting to land, and air traffic control is not giving them permission to land because they don't know who to put down first. And that's similar to what I see in organizations that have this problem. And the owner feels important, and they're obviously busy, but they're far from productive. And that's more and more of what I am hearing when I talk with businesses, and where the greatest frustration comes in, and where they're really stuck on how do they get out of that. That's also a tough habit to break, because again, it feels kind of good when you can answer somebody's question, solve somebody's problem. That dopamine hit kicks in, and you're willing to go charge ahead after the next one. So that's kind of what I'm seeing. You're fighting here through the cold, so I'm not going to have you talk too much because it gets you.
No, that's fine.
What's from a financial perspective, you talked about payroll. I think payroll is a good one, because payroll can be a huge time suck. What are some other things that, from a financial perspective, maybe an owner should look at that would help save more time from either understanding their financial documents or preparing their end of month, so that somebody like you that's coming in and reviewing it and trying to coach them on how to better manage their their financial picture, what do you recommend?
Um, Again, depending on what size, right?
Right.
So if you're talking about the companies that are trying to get over their first hurdle, they're trying to get to that first boost of getting bigger. Um, you know, I would stop doing or stop trying to do everything yourself. Bookkeeping is one.
Mm,
Paying your own bills because you're afraid of somebody not being able to do it the way that you want it done. If you train them, they'll do it your way. If they're smart, they'll do it better than you did.
I think that's the key.
And it's hard to believe that somebody can do that, but they can. There are people out there who they'll show me stuff, they'll do bookkeeping stuff in front of me, and I'll go, oh, I should have known that. Or I should have done that myself. Why didn't I know that? You know, because there's times where you just have to listen to somebody else, and that person should be able to show you something new that you wouldn't have
Right.
known before. So if you follow all these other things that are talking about, you're always learning, etc., then at somewhere you start to see some of the silly stuff that you're doing as the owner of the company, as the chief executive of the company. You know, you have a lot of hats, a lot of jobs to do. Which ones are the ones that take up a lot of time but don't actually put any extra money in your pocket? Those are the things that I think you have to identify right off the bat. Bookkeeping is so important, but bookkeeping will be one of the first things that gets pushed to be done later. It's like,
Yes.
oh, I'll get to that. I'll just write this check out and it'll be fine. I'll get to the rest of the checks later, or I'll pay these bills and then we'll do the bookkeeping on it later. So 3 months later now, none of that got done. So you haven't seen a report. You don't know if you made, the right amount of money. You don't know if you've got everything covered. You don't know what your cash position is. Like all of a sudden, you don't know anything.
Yeah.
It's because you wanted to do the bookkeeping to save the couple $100 to have somebody do it, you know. And I don't want to sound like I'm putting anybody down because we've all done it. Every
Right.
single person has done it, and it's a consistent thing, and it should be known that this is like one of those flags that go up because your bookkeeper's getting your stuff months later. If it's partially because she's waiting for questions for you or he's waiting for questions from you, then get past that because there's probably a little bit more to it of you don't you don't have the time to do it. You need to give them more power to do it, more power to finish it.
Yeah, and I think another issue that many owners, especially of smaller businesses, well, even small to medium sized businesses, if they don't have a regular bookkeeper, a regular controller, accountant, whatever, doing, entering the information, is it could be miscategorized. I see this is especially true on the small businesses where there is actually a category called Ask the Accountant, or there is something that should be on the balance sheet that's on the income statement. And those are just, you see those things right away and realize that it's miscategorized and you can make that adjustment. But that, again, is something that slows down and could lead to inaccurate information that could also cost you money from a tax perspective. And, while we don't want to focus entirely on taxes, it's more focused on growth. That does turn into a problem if that continues, especially over a long period of time. You could either pay too much in taxes, or worse yet, not enough in taxes, and incur fines and penalties and interest as a result, which then, of course, makes Rich a very sad boy.
It's funny because Intuit put that category in its standard chart of accounts.
Oh, really?
Ask My Accountant is actually a QuickBooks account.
Ah,
And they did that because if you don't know, don't just leave it out, put it here.
right.
And certain clients, I'm totally fine with that. Like I have certain clients that I get surprised because he'll get the last minute, ability to go buy a backhoe or a pickup truck and he'll be like, I don't know how to book that. I'm like, he knows how to book that. But it's kind of one of those things where he also wants to let me know that he did it
Mm-hmm.
so that I can see if there's anything he can do to benefit himself for the fact that he did it. So that's what he and I have for that Ask My Accountant. And 9 times out of 10, it's a skid steer, it's a backhoe, it's
Sure.
some attachment that costs thousands of dollars to go on the backhoe. or it's a pickup truck. Almost guaranteed it's a pickup. So,
Yeah.
so
So that is a good point. Yeah, where that is actually a good column to have, and as
yep,
long as it's not abused, because sometimes I've seen like 3/4 of the accounting is in the ask the accountant part of it.
yeah,
That should tell you right there. You probably need a bookkeeper, or you need somebody who at least knows what they're doing on how to
yeah,
enter that information correctly, so that it can make the tax accountant's job and the CFO's job, if you're
hmm
having a fractional person come in, a lot easier.
yep,
Rich, I'm going to keep it short today because I know you're fighting through this, and I think we hit on a couple key points that hopefully get our listeners to think about maybe as you're going into the new year and as you're starting to look at things like your finances and how you're spending your time. Is it going to be the most productive, or are you just going to be busy? Um, you probably got a little bit left in you. How do they get a hold of you?
Best way is by email, rich@xcxo.net.
Excellent. And you can get a hold of me at dan@xcxo.net. And Bob will tell you more about what we can do for you on a fractional executive level.
Thanks for listening to Books and the Biz. If today's conversation sparked new ideas for your company, the team at XCXO can help you turn those ideas into action. XCXO brings together seasoned executives, fractional CEOs, COOs, CFOs, and CXOs who step into your business with the experience, strategy, and leadership to drive real results. Whether you're trying to scale, strengthen operations, improve profitability, or prepare for transition, our experts help you move faster and lead with confidence. To learn more or start a conversation, visit xcxo.net. That's xcxo.net, your shortcut to stronger leadership and a better run business. Thanks again for joining us. We'll see you next time on Books and the Biz.